Hey y'all, it's Christy Cook from Teadoddles. It's time for another Tutorial Tuesday, and today is going to be more about tips than a tutorial. I thought I'd share with you some of the tools I use for sewing and just a few tips and tricks if you're a beginner sewist. I am trying to do a quicker video today because I gotta get this uploaded. Preparing for Hurricane Michael to come through. It's hopefully not going to be too forceful by the time it gets to us, but they have closed the schools for the next 2 days, so just preparing for that. So let's get through this Tutorial Tuesday first, and welcome any new subscribers and welcome back subscribers. I'm glad to have you here. So the first thing I do when I get ready to sew something is try to make sure all my pieces are cut out and marked and ready to go. So for example, this bag that I'm going to sew, I have this is going to be hard to show like this, but I'm going to try. Let's see. You might can see some of this, but I will cut all of my pieces out, get any zippers, anything I might need, and put it all together to have with me when I get ready to sew. That's just a good thing to do if you're getting ready to sew. There's nothing more frustrating than starting to sew and realize you forgot to cut out a piece, or you're missing a component that you need to finish. So that's the best place to start when you're going to sew something, is to make sure you have all your pieces and parts cut out and marked before you sit down to sew. That's just going to make the sewing experience that much nicer, especially if you're sewing things that could be chain sewn, like quilt pieces, or even when I make these bags, if I'm making more than one of them at a time, I will sit there and do all of one part before I move on to the next part. It just makes things go much smoother, or much more smoothly. So that is one of my first tips. My other tip is to have things that you use the most close by. This is my drafting table where I do most of my cutting and other DIY projects. Over here to the left is my little desk where I sew. So the things I'm going to show you I have sitting either on my pegboard that's above it or around the desk, so it's easy to reach. This little cup right here sits in one of my bins, and it holds some of the tools that I use a lot when I'm sewing. So for example, seam ripper. Yes, I use that a lot when I'm sewing because I've made a mistake or what have you, and I need to rip a seam out. I will say that I enjoy, I don't remember what brand this is, but I enjoy this one with the bigger handle. It's just easier to hang on to. If you find that your seam ripper is not ripping like it should, you need a new seam ripper, okay? These things only stay sharp for so long. I don't know of any way to sharpen this in particular because of the weird way it's made. But, so if it's not ripping out those stitches, you need to get a new seam ripper. I'm not going to say one's better than the other. They all do the same thing. The little cheaper ones you get that are shorter and have the little plastic handle, I find those harder to hold on to. So I just like this with the grippier handle, and it's bigger. So okay, the next thing or things in my cup are marking devices. Pencils and pens for marking fabric with. I have a variety of things. Sorry about all the rattling. I usually keep, these are for quilting clean erase is what they say. I have a yellow, gray, and white one, and then I also have this blue from Singer color marker because depending on what I'm marking on, I may need a different color depending on the color of the fabric. and the texture of the fabric. I also have a regular pencil. Then I have this sew line pencil. And I also have a basic gel pen. I find that the gel pen works the best when I have to do a lot of marking for, like when you sew half square triangles and things like that, you have to mark the line. I prefer this because I don't have to, the pencil I feel like, even though this is for fabric, it doesn't mark as well the first time. You have to go over it more than once, which you can pull on the fabric. That's another thing to consider with your marking tool, what you're marking on. These type work best for cotton or marking quilting things. I'm marking knit or other apparel fabrics. I prefer to use this thing from Clover. This is a fairly new tool for me, but it has a little wheel at the end and it has chalk in here, and it just so that you don't have to press super hard to get a line. I guess you could see that maybe. But I enjoy using this, or I will use, I don't have that with me, but there's a paper that comes in different colors that has chalk on one side, and you can use these little things here to mark with. I actually haven't used these in a while. I have two different ones. I have this one with smaller teeth and this one with more pronounced teeth, because it depends on the fabric what you need to use. I don't use this a lot on knit fabric, especially the one with the pointier teeth, because it can leave little holes. And it stretches more. But these rolling ones, you don't have to press as hard. So it wouldn't stretch as much as, say, a pencil or a pen would when you're marking things. If you have to push on it too much to mark, you're going to stretch and leave little divots in your fabric. So those are just the tools that I usually use to mark with. I also have tweezers. At least one of these came with, I think, my serger. And these are very useful when you need, with the bent pointed tip like that. When you have to rethread a needle, especially in the serger, or just for pulling fabric and adjusting it when your fingers won't reach in there, when you're sewing on the machine and you need to turn things and manipulate things. These come in very handy for that. They're also handy for changing needles, because sometimes when I'm trying to change a needle, it slips out of my finger and it falls down into the hole in the needle plate. And then I have to pull it out with the tweezers. So these are always helpful for lots of different things. These are not tweezers. This is used for when you have to pull something through a casing. It's got little prongs on the end, and this little thing slides up and it grips and it hangs on to it, so you can pull things when you need to turn ties, or if you're pulling elastic through a casing. This is good for that. And I don't know the exact name of it yet, but I will put it across the screen. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, that's what that's used for. And then I also always have in here a little small pair of snips for cutting threads when I'm at the sewing machine. I do have a thread cutter on the side of my machine, but I use this to cut the end that I start with and things like that, because it's important when you are sewing to cut those end threads off before you sew something else, because they'll get hung up and they'll be hanging out everywhere, and it's just easier to do it before you sew over them. My other favorite thing is this thing. It's called a purple thing. That is the name of it, and I don't know if you can see it. It's written right there on the side. And it's probably not going to focus on that, but it has a little bent plastic pointy thing on one end, and then it has this square plastic here. It has this little slot here. I don't know exactly what that's for, but this is when you have to turn corners, and this little square is 1/4 of an inch as well. It has a mark on it. But this is also useful when you're trying to pull things or hold things down under the machine and your finger's too big. It's good for when you turn things inside out and you want to poke the corner inside out, and the square end is good for that as well. So this is a very useful tool to have. The other thing I have in here is the screwdriver to my sewing machine. So when I'm changing feet, or if I need to clean out the needle plate and things like that, this what this is for. So I keep it handy for when I need to change out, like if I want to use my walking foot, I have to change out the whole shank and everything, not just the snap-on foot. So that's why I keep it in this cup. So this cup stays in the rack just above my sewing area, so it's easy reach and when I need these tools. The other thing that's close by me is this little thing. Yeah, that thing used to be, you see that ring, gray ring there? This used to be glued to it, but because I painted this before I glued it, then the paint, it just kind of peeled off. So, anywho, this plate is glued down, however. I made this out of an old bundt pan, and I painted it. I'll link to the blog post where I did that, and this is just some dishes, and this was a candle holder and a cup, and then I made a pin cushion right there. So I keep this right beside my sewing area. It has this magnetic pin. Well, it's not a cushion. This is very dusty, but it has this magnetic pin thing, which is great when I'm taking pins out when I'm sewing. I can just toss them onto that. And it also will stick to this metal tray. Then I have this other pin cushion, which I can grab when I'm pinning and move along with me. These are regular, just regular pins. That is very bent. Just a regular straight pin in here, the regular size. This one holds my longer quilting pins. They're just better when you want to hold more fabric together. See how much longer it is? I also will use this if I'm using for my bags sometimes, because I have heavier fabric. These are finer, seem to be finer points than these other pins. But these are, the shorter pins are better for garments because you just have the seam allowance, and these longer pins are great for quilts because you can pin them when you want to align seams and things like that. It just is very helpful for that. So I keep all of those pins handy. I also like to use these Clover Clips when I'm putting on binding and stuff like that. These are wonderful for stuff like that. They don't work so great for things like slinky knits and slinky fabrics because it weighs down the fabric and it can pull off easier. But I have this size, and then I also have this with the smaller tip on it. And it's great when you have something smaller you're working with to really get on there and grip it. So I have both. I have those two sizes. I really enjoy that. And then in this little one, I have feet that I use the most often because I have a storage system for my other feet, which I showed in my last video. I'm just throwing things at y'all. So I keep the ones that I use the most in this little tray, so I don't have to dig through that every time I need a foot if I want to change it. So, but the ones that I don't use that much, I put in the other one. And then in this other bin, some other useful tools for holding things together are a basic bobby pin. And these are like those hair clip things that you can buy. So depending on what I'm trying to hold together, will depend on what I use these for, right? Bobby pins are really good for things that you don't want pinholes in. Like if you're showing leathers or something like that, or faux leather. Because if you put a pin in it, it's going to leave a mark that won't come out. So this or this is better for something like that because it's more heavy than the Clover Clips. They don't work as good for that because they're got a smaller inset part. So these work great for things like that, or thicker materials as well, which pins are hard to penetrate. Corduroys and upholstery fabrics like that. So then my other one is just where I toss empty thread spools and things like that. I think I have a safety pin in there and stuff. It's just kind of a catch-all where I put stuff till I can put it away somewhere else. So this is something that I keep beside my sewing machine. So all those things are handy when I need pins or feet or anything like that. Another thing that I have, and I showed this in my last tutorial video, is this pin cushion. This is where I keep needles in that I'm currently using for my sewing machine. Hold on, I need a sip of coffee. Yeah, I have, let's see if it'll focus on that. I have written on there in each little section the different needles and the sizes. So then I know if one is missing, I know what's in my sewing machine if I don't remember when I was sewing last. And I can easily find the one I'm looking for because I can just look at the size. So see, like my 8012 micro is missing. I know that that is what I currently have in my machine. And yes, these scissors do come out. My dad found this at Walmart on clearance. It's actually a very useful, you can put you could probably stick things in these little wedges if you wanted to. I don't know. I don't know if I can find a link to that or not, because it's just something he found. It's actually quite useful and handy. So I also have another pair of scissors right down there, but I usually tend to grab the other ones because I just remember where those are before I remember these. But that's a good way to keep up with the sewing machine needles you're using, because you do need to use different ones for different things. The micro sharp needles are great for piecing and quilting. They're also good for some clothing, like knits and stuff, because they have such a sharp point. And then I have a universal needle, which I tend to use when I'm sewing two different kinds of fabrics together. I have different size knit needles, which is you have to have when you're sewing different kinds of knits. I have a top stitch needle for quilting. I have one that's called a quilting needle, which is about the same as a top stitch needle, except it doesn't have as long of an eye. I think it just has a sharper point or something. I don't know exactly why that's called a quilting needle, but that's one of my other tips, is to help keep your sewing needles organized. And as important as it is to pick the correct needle when you're sewing, it's also important to pick the correct thread. Now, they do have the universal polyester thread, which is what this is. This is Gutermann, one of my favorite threads. It has a slightly thicker, it's not quilting weight, but it's a little bit thicker than just standard like Coates and Clark thread. And it seems more durable to me. So yeah, if you look on the side of this, you'll see where it tells you it's 100% polyester. This can be used in pretty much any kind of sewing, really. I wouldn't use it in some of like denim and things like that. I would use some of this other thread I'm going to show you. It just won't hold up as well, but this is a pretty universal type thread. And then you can see this has got little teeth where you can wrap this around. Maybe you can see that. I don't know. And if you didn't know, this whole bottom comes out. I don't know why, but it does. So if you needed to take that off for some reason, you could. I have no idea why they designed it that way. The larger ones are not that way. But you'll notice this has a white, whereas these two have a tan spool. That's because these are 100% cotton, okay? And they tend to do that in brands that have a different color for different kinds of thread. So the white is the 100% polyester, and then this one is the 100% cotton. will show. This is one of my favorites for piecing quilts. I usually buy this kind of neutral color, tannish color, and a gray versus a black and a white because it's not as stark, and I can use it for quilting as well as piecing if I want to, and it blends in pretty good with most quilts to have the tan or the gray versus black and white, which I find too contrasting and to stand out more. So, and I tend to buy the smaller spools in the different colors because I don't use the different colors as much. So yeah, and these bigger, like these two, the bottoms do come out, the medium and small, but the big one, the bottom does not come out. This whole ring will come off, but the inside doesn't come out. So that's Gutermann thread. And then there's Coates and Clark, which this little, it doesn't come off necessarily, but it kind of pops up like that on both ends. So you can put the thread back under there if you want to. This now is Dual Duty Plus. This is Jean's top stitching thread, which is a thicker thread. It makes it stand out more. It's more durable. This is 100% polyester, but it's just a thicker thread than regular standard polyester thread. So it's going to hold that denim together better, because denim, when you sew several layers together, you're going to want to use a heavy duty needle as well. A heavy duty machine is probably better, but you can do a regular machine. You just have to make sure you go slower when you stitch that denim so it doesn't break your needle, because it will, even if you have a heavy duty needle, if you go too fast. Ask me how I know. Maybe I've done that. Maybe. And then there's this denim thread that's also by Coates and Clark. This just has a notch in the side of the plastic. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that you can just wrap the thread in. These ends don't come out at all. This is 68% polyester and 32% cotton. But it has that denim look to it. If you have to repair jeans or something like that, they have it, I think, of one other wash. But this is pretty variegated. I use it to fix my husband's pants because he gets holes in his pants all the time and I have to have patches on them, so that's what I use this for. Then there is also Aurifil, which is a wonderful thread. I do love Aurifil for quilting, for top stitching. It's just it is 100% cotton, but it's like a shinier cotton than most. This looks dusty because it's just been sitting up on my shelf. But this one, the end also comes off. And that's how you catch your thread end. You just stick it under there and close it up. Aurifil is made in Italy. It is a little, well, I don't know. The price point, Gutermann is a little bit cheaper. But this one, yeah. This is great for top stitching on quilts. I don't really use this for garment sewing at all. I prefer to use a polyester or cotton, depending on what I'm sewing with. I will also use a rayon, which these two are rayon threads. Sulky is another brand that some people like for quilting. I think they have 100% cotton as well, but I buy this when I want. Like, this is a rayon. Just dropping things all day. This is a rayon, and it again has the little end that pops out so you can store your thread up under it. And then this is a rayon also, but this is a Coates and Clark. Well, no, this is a trilobal polyester, which is, it's just a stronger kind of thread. I know what trilobal means, but I can't think of it offhand. But that's a trilobal polyester. It's just the way they make the thread. But I only use these. You see how shiny these are? I use these when I'm sewing like satins or silky type fabrics, okay? I would not use this on a cotton unless you're just doing embroidery with it, because it doesn't really, you have to adjust your tension sometimes in your sewing machine for these because they will snap. It's just the nature of them. This trilobal is pretty strong, but it still, you see, it just, if it gets hung up in too tight tension, it will snap. So let's see how easy it is to snap this 100% cotton Gutermann. See, it snaps too, but, well, yeah, that came off. If you look at the end of it, it's still fairly straight, whereas this, when I pulled it, got all wiggly. Yeah, and that's because of the way it's made. That's all that is, and what it's made out of. So that's what I think about threads. I am not particular to one kind of thread. I just like certain threads for certain things, if that makes any sense. It's not the brand, it's just that I've found over the years that I prefer Gutermann for my machine piecing and some of my quilting. Now, I do like the RFL for quilting the top, but not for piecing it, mostly because it's pricier. And it's just, they have different weights of it too, which makes it nice for quilting. And when I'm talking about jeans wear or denim or heavy duty fabrics, I prefer the Coats and Clark for the most part. I will use Gutermann for some of that. And like I said, the Sulky or Coats and Clark trilobal polyester or rayon for slinky type fabrics and satins and things like that. Okay, so another way to sew, to do your needles is like this. This little thing keeps, the only thing about this, it has a heavy duty and like regular point, shear, all that stuff. The different colors mean different things, but I always have to look it up because I can't remember. And then if I don't remember the size in this thing, I have to look up, because there can be different size regular points, different size ball points, different size heavy duty points, shear, all that stuff. Which is why I like my method with the pin cushion better, because I can know the size, because you can see the size on that. It just takes a lot of twisting, and it's not always easy to see the size marked on the edge of those. Sometimes I will run a marker over it lightly to make it stand out better, but then sometimes I use the magnifying thing on, or the zoom in on my phone camera to see it. So that's a tip if you have a hard time seeing those little letters and numbers. Okay, so when it comes to bobbins, I prefer a metal bobbin over a plastic bobbin, depending on your machine. I have had some machines come with plastic bobbins, but these metal ones just work better, in my opinion. The plastic ones tend to get burrs on them sometimes. It hangs up on the thread. I don't really have that problem with these metal ones. I just like the metal ones over the plastic ones. Okay, I had to take a little break. I had a phone call from my son. But I was talking about cutting utensils, and you need to dedicate a pair of scissors to just fabric when you're sewing. Do not cut anything else but fabric with it. You may even, if you're planning on cutting heavier fabrics and lighter weight fabrics, you may even want a pair dedicated to just the heavy fabrics and just the lighter weight fabrics, because it does make a difference. The heavier fabrics like denims and velvets, upholstery fabrics, corduroys, things like that, can wear your scissors differently. I have this pair, which is a little bit heavier weight, and I have a lighter weight pair. And I do have also some pinking shears, which is useful when I'm cutting fabrics that fray a lot to keep, or just I want a decorative edge on something. And I have these spring-loaded scissors, which is good if you're cutting a lot and you have wear on your hands. It's an easier thing to use. But you should at least have one pair that's only for fabric. Do not let anybody cut paper with it. Do not let anybody cut wire with it. Do not let anybody cut anything else with your fabric scissors. I was actually at Joann's yesterday, and the lady that was going to cut my fabric was searching for her better pair of scissors, because there are people at Joann's that don't understand that you cannot use fabric scissors to cut other things, and they will cut other things with it, tape and things, and you cannot do that. Trust me. I have tons of scissors that I use for different purposes because they all wear differently when you cut with them. But when you're sewing, you have to have a pair of scissors that is only for cutting fabric. I just wanted to make that clear for any new sewists out there. My favorite tools to use are a rotary cutter. Yes, you can use this with apparel fabrics as well as quilting, which is something I've only discovered this past year because of watching YouTube videos. You can use this with fabric weights to cut out around curves. You just have to go a little slower, so you don't have to use pins to hold down your pattern, as long as you have a place to spread out your pattern, and a mat large enough for that. But I would use a smaller one. This is one of my newer ones I recently got, but this is a 60 millimeter and this is a 45 millimeter, and this smaller one, they have one smaller than this too, which is better for smaller stuff. This is one I use when I have lots of layers to cut through. And also don't use this to cut paper as well. I have a smaller one back there that's only for paper, because it will wear the blade differently. I use these along with, this is my big long ruler I've had forever. It has a lip on the end that catches on the end of my mat to cut with, and I haven't found another one like this, and so I keep this one because I like that lip. It helps me line things up. And then I have this little 6-inch square one, which is great. This is great for quilts, blocks and things, but it's also great when I cut out my little corners for my bags. So I use those along with my rotary cutters. So those are cutting utensils. And then you can kind of see a little bit here, my cutting mat. This is my large cutting mat. This one is 24 by 36. You don't have to have one that big. Depends on what you're cutting. I just got this slightly smaller one at Joann's. I'm knocking things over again. This one is 12 by 18. Yeah. And I actually got this and another ruler. This size ruler. It was on clearance for $12.47, but they had 25% off clearance coupon. So I needed one that was a little bit, it's not even, this is like a quarter of the size of my big one. But I needed it when I want to cut out small things and I don't want to drag out my big one, because the other one I had is just a narrow, like 3 inches by something, and it's just not big enough. So yeah, cutting mats are useful for not just quilting, but for apparel sewing as well, or bag sewing, or whatever you're doing. I found with my bags that I just have a size that I cut out, and I just cut it out versus using a pattern, because it's just quicker and easier to cut them out. So yeah, I think that's everything for today. This actually ran longer than I thought it would, but hopefully you found some useful information about sewing tools, and if you have any questions, please let me know. You can either email me, which is down below, or you can message me on Instagram, or, which sometimes I don't see those because it's like they don't pop up on my feed, right? And Facebook's really bad about that, so I wouldn't message me on Facebook because I don't always see. I don't know why, it just doesn't always pop up. But Your best bet is to email me or comment below and just let me know if you have questions about anything you saw here. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Think about subscribing. And I will see y'all Saturday for my Yarny Goodness podcast. Bye.